Hey, Mike Sevilla here from FamilyMedicineRocks.com, and this is a talk that I did along with Deb Clements here at the annual spring conference of the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine meeting here in New Orleans. This video was recorded on Friday, April 29, 2011. The topic is medicine and social media. I want to thank STFM for the opportunity to broadcast this live over the internet on their Ustream page. I don't think that's ever been done at this meeting before. And I do have to warn you that this video is not short, and it's a very amateur video, meaning the lighting is off, and I wasn't able to totally square up and line up the video image because there was a presentation before us and didn't have a lot of time to try to perfect things. But in addition to this video, we also Ustreamed another live video presentation, and we did a lot of stuff here at the meeting to try to show the family medicine community what we can do with social media. In addition to these video talks, sessions, I also wrote some blog posts. We did a lot of Twitter during the meeting, some Facebook during the meeting, and also we did a live Twitter chat during one of the evenings here called Fam Med Chat for family medicine topics. So I hope you enjoy this video, and if you have comments, please forward them on to FamilyMedicineRocks.com. Enjoy.
I'm Deb Clements, and I'm here with Mike Sevilla. We started planning this talk quite some time ago, and in the meantime, things changed a lot. Things changed an awful lot in social media, and as a matter of fact, Mike was on the cover of Medical Economics, and so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction about social media, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike. So why does it matter? Why do we care about social media? What are social networks? Are social networks important to us? And I know we're sort of all off in this electronic land, but I want you to, for a minute, imagine that your house is on fire. All right? Your house is on fire. All right. Fortunately, you live by a stream, and you have a bucket. And so you're going to take that bucket, you're going to go to the stream, and you're going to put water on your house fire. But it's still going to burn down, because you just can't do that fast enough. There's no way you can. But you've got 100 neighbors, and they all have buckets. And they all come to your stream, and they take their buckets of water and put that on your fire. Your house is still going to burn down, because your 100 neighbors aren't going to be able to get there fast enough with their buckets. But if your neighbors get together, the same 100 people, and form a bucket brigade, where they hand off buckets of water, you can put that fire out. Same resources, same people, different configuration. You've got a social network. And so it's not electronic, but it is a network, and it's a very effective network. Where does it break down? Well, you only know what's happening, the guy in front of you and the guy behind you, and you're hoping that everybody's doing their job. And so if somebody in that line doesn't do their job, it's going to fall apart. So that network doesn't work as well. It also doesn't work when you get 6 feet of snow and school's closed. This, back before everything was on the news all the time, we had telephone calling trees, right? You use those for soccer, you use those for all kinds of things. They're really effective. They're effective in getting a piece of information out to large groups of people pretty quickly, so that if you're at the end of the calling tree, you're not already trying to get your kids to school in the car or get to the game. It works. It's another kind of a social network. When it doesn't work is when I get the call and I go back to sleep. And I don't call the rest of the people in the tree, right? And so this network falls apart there. We have yet another kind of social network that we use, and it's called the military. Military brigades are formed in networks of small groups of people who depend upon one another. And they know each person in that group, they depend integrally on that person in the group, and they're loosely related to other groups. So still no electronics, but you've got a social network. It's a social network that's very, very effective. Then we have other kinds of social networks. And these are the kinds that we're going to talk about today. I want you to think about who your friends are. And I don't mean in this context, I mean in the context of your life. And generally, friends are people who are not relatives, although they can be. The sociologic theory is that each of us have about 5 friends that we would call in a time of trouble. You needed somebody, there are about 5 people you can name to do that. You have influence over their lives, they have influence over your lives. 2 concepts in social network. 6 degrees of separation, which I know you've all heard about, and I'll talk in a minute about where that came from. But then degrees of influence. There seem to be about 3 degrees of influence. So if you take your 5 friends, and you all remember, well, not all of you, but that old Fabergé commercial, and she has 2 friends, and she has 2 friends, and so on. Your 5 friends, their 5 friends, and the 5 friends beyond that, those are your 3 degrees of influence. It seems to be about 150 people that you influence or influence you. What's changed with social media in the network perspective is that configuration and the transmission and contagion has changed because the pace has changed, right? And so I know Mike's going to talk a lot about that. The 6 degrees of separation concept is that there are 6 degrees of relationship that separate you from pretty much anyone else on the planet. That arose in the 1960s when a researcher in Nebraska said, we're going to identify somebody in Boston because we can't think of 2 places that are more dissimilar from one another than Nebraska and Boston, right? In the 60s. And we're going to see how long it takes for these people in Nebraska to identify that person in Boston. And they did it by mail. And on average, it was 6 contacts to find that person. The study was replicated in 2002 using email in 18 different countries. And it was still 6 degrees. So with your 6 degrees of separation and your 3 degrees of influence, we can pretty much reach halfway around the world. So it's an interesting concept. Why do you care? Well, you care because your students and residents are doing it. And the pace of change is happening relatively quickly, and we can be there. And when you're connected, your influence can be extraordinary. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mike now.
Okay. So my name is Mike Sevilla, and just to kind of give you a background about me, I'm from Northeastern Ohio, and I'm in full-time private practice. So being at an education meeting is kind of a fish out of water type of thing, but I've really enjoyed being at this meeting and making new connections. Just to let you know what this camera is about, SDFM gave us the opportunity to stream this or produce this live on the internet right now. And I have a lot of friends that we've contacted through Twitter and Facebook who are watching me, and I'm going to wave at them. The good thing is that it will be able, we're saving it, so everybody who is at the Jazz Festival right now can watch this tomorrow. So that's one of the things that I think social media has a great opportunity to do. With email, we have asynchronous communication. You can have a kind of an asynchronous meeting. So that's kind of why the camera's there. I want to thank Mark for running the camera for me. So why is social media important? Well, me as a full-time clinician, we have research like this. This is from the Pew Internet Research Project, saying that patients are looking up information on the internet before they even see it. Why? Because they bring it in to see it. They're like, hey doc, I found this on WebMD, what do you think about it? And we're seeing this more and more now. And when I talk to practicing docs, I said, you can't brush off social media because it's not going to be the government, it's not going to be insurance companies, it's going to be your patients driving you to be familiar with it. That's why I need to be familiar with it. And I'll have another slide to really make that point. So we all know the power of the internet, okay? Just have to go back a few months to all these organizations of, people making their point of view known. This is an interesting slide in that this is from Egypt, this is from late January. You see on the right, all that blue stuff, that is the activity on the internet. Texting, trying to organize. What happened right there, the government made a few phone calls, turned off the internet to the entire country. That is the power of social media and the internet, and you're seeing that play out in the news these days. Anybody see this article? Okay. I found this on Twitter. The people in family medicine on social media on Twitter, this was huge last week. For people who don't know, this came out last week, New York Times, big story. Family doc, solo, can't find anybody to take over the practice. Really interesting. People who were following this for the last few days, a lot of chatter about it, a lot of blog posts about it. Did you know about it? How did you know about it? So this is a way I think family medicine really has a chance to tell our story, because I think a lot of other people have been telling it and it's wrong. They're doing some creative things on the internet these days. This is a hospital CEO. Watch my colonoscopy. Okay? Sure, it's entertaining, but what did he do? He took the patient through the steps. He takes the patient, hey, I took my prep, wasn't that bad. I met with the anesthesiologist. This is what they talked about. I don't know who he has running the camera here, probably one of his vice president people. He just got out of the procedure. He was like, please come to my hospital. We give the best colonoscopies. But what does that do? That cuts through the mystery of what it is for patients to go through this. Because I know, when I talk to my patients, it's pretty darn difficult to try to talk them into it, unless they have a connection, family history, something like that. You show them something like this, it's free, they can watch it, you have them watch it, and come to me, and then we start the dialogue. Patients are using social media. This is a good friend of mine, Carrie Sparling. She's from the northeast part of the country. She has diabetes, type 1. She started blogging when she was 6 years. She started her blog a few years ago, but she was diagnosed with diabetes when she was 6 years old, and that's the name of her. That's why the name of her blog. Why did she start blogging? She started blogging because she thought she was the only one with her disease process. That's why patients are using this stuff. They're trying to find this community which may not be in their geographical community. It's funny because one of her most funny posts is saying something like, well, how do you hide an insulin pump in a wedding dress? Nobody in her geographical area would know that. She puts that out there on social media. Huge, a lot of comments. So she feels connected. That diabetes social media community is very, very powerful because, they like using tech stuff. So if you want an example of a patient community using social media, the diabetes community is a great example of that. That's me, in case you didn't know. When I first put this up there, a lot of people thought, hey, that's a Photoshop. That's not real, that's not you. But actually, the funny thing is, Deb was the first one to give me a heads up on it on my Facebook page. Because I was interviewed for this. They wanted to interview somebody who docs are using social media. And then a few weeks later, I got a phone call. We want to send out a photographer. I thought I'd get a little bit inset picture like that on page 54 or something like that. But then Deb let me know that it was on the cover. And then this has really opened up a lot of opportunities for me, which I'll talk about. One of the things that we talked about in this interview, which I think is very important, is the question of, especially if you're a physician, but anybody who takes care of patients, should you friend your patients on Facebook? I see a lot of things out there. Yeah, that's a good question. So the opinions on this are all over the board. Okay, some people will say absolutely no. Some people will say I have no problem with it. The way I told him in the article was, and I'm from small town. Okay, and I told them that patients and doctors have been friends for a long time, even before the internet. So I am selective on who I do. It's not everybody, and it's not nobody. But, even when I go to the store or something like that, I say, hey, doc, and we have great people where I'm at. They don't take advantage of that, relationship and say, hey, can you refill this, or I'm having a cold. I just deal with like anything else. I'm like, hey, I forgot, I'm not working today, but, if I direct you to the office, we can get things schedule. I also get questions, what if I get contacted by my patients on Facebook or something like that? I just direct them back to the office. So questions I get from docs are, Facebook is for the young people, it's not for me. This is pretty good data that's been out for a while. The fastest growing demographic, women over 55, okay, which is really applicable to me because it's really, Medicare population 65 or grandparents or something like that, and I get a lot of questions from that group, which really blows my mind sometimes. Like, how'd you know about that? So Facebook is everywhere, and it's really something I'm telling practicing docs that you cannot ignore that. And there's some articles now coming out. Is Facebook healthy for the doctor-patient relationship? There's a really good dialogue going on about that right now. There's some research that is starting on this too, so we're getting some data, which I'm really interested in. So I'm glad that there are some people that are trying to get data, trying to get research on using social media, either in an education standpoint or from a patient standpoint as well. Anybody see this article? This was yesterday. Okay. So, should your doctor be on Facebook? Okay. This article gives very similar things to what I'm saying, all over the board. Some absolutely no, some absolutely yes. So it's starting to get out there now, being talked about. So this is my website. Okay, I'm kind of biased towards family medicine, as you can probably figure out. So what I talk about here are social media and medicine type topics. So this is from today. I just shared some thoughts from the meeting here. Okay, and for those of you who were here yesterday to see Mark's talk, they recorded it live on Ustream, and you can see that here, and you can review that anytime. And I've had a lot of email from my friends today say, "Oh, that was a great thing that happened yesterday. Family medicine community, you should be moving more towards doing social media." So that's kind of why I'm trying to raise the roof or whatever, trying to get family medicine to do this more. And I also have a Twitter page. So shout out to all the people that I met on Twitter, but probably will meet in person after this session. So, yes, ma'am.
Oh, well, I thought you said raise your hand if you've been on Twitter.
Okay, yeah, you have Twitter? You have Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll talk after.
What was the question?
We'll talk after. No, that's okay. That's all right. So for practicing docs, I tell them this is the most important slide of my whole stack. Okay? And I give them this talk to my hospital. I give them this talk to at a state meeting I was at. And this is what really galvanizes it for practicing physicians. Okay? What I tell them is Google your name. Put your name in your favorite search engine and hit enter. What do you get? For most docs who don't know anything about this, the number one link that they get is a physician rating site. Okay? Like, whatever it is, health grades or whatever. A lot of practicing physicians don't even know that. And I tell them that your patients are talking about you and you don't even know that. Hospitals, the same thing too. For a lot of hospitals, you put a hospital name up there. If they don't have a Facebook page or something, the first thing is a rating site. So that really kind of solidifies it, especially for practicing physicians who think that social media is just a fad. So what I tell docs is, how many people are on LinkedIn? Everybody know what people with LinkedIn is? Okay. So those of you who don't know what LinkedIn is, it's linkedin.com. Okay. And what you do is you sign up for that, and it's kind of a professional type social networking site. Okay. Why is that good? That's good because you control the information that goes in there. You can put your office address, you can put your whatever you like on there. And what I've seen, it's only anecdotal, but what I've seen is that when, especially physicians, if they sign up for LinkedIn, that will bump up and be their first link. It won't be anything else. And I do that because I've had some patients, some new patients who have come to see me and say, "Doc, we just moved into town, we did a search for you, that's why we're here, because we think that you know a lot about this stuff, and we want somebody who's really connected to what we're doing." So from a recruiting standpoint, from a practicing physician, it's going to be huge. And there's already articles in things like American Medical News, your social media reputation, okay? That's going to be kind of a buzzword. It's kind of going to be coming on if it hasn't already. You probably heard of some bad things that happened that I'll cover here. They're writing about it now when med students post patient pictures. Okay, everybody has their story of they heard of this med student here, they posted this, and now they're no longer a med student. Okay? So, something that I'm starting to see now, which I'm glad is, a lot of institutions, a lot of medical schools, residency programs, they have, and hospitals, zero social media policy. There is no rules of the road. So when they had things like this, they really had nothing to fall back on. So I have a lot of people ask me, well, what do I do here? Well, like, what's your social media policy? We don't have it. Well, that's your step one, okay? Because institutions have policies about everything else, but social media really needs to be up there. That's a placenta, and that's an ex-nursing student. Okay, everybody has a similar, is that from your neck of the woods? Yeah. So, it's happening out there, okay? And something I'm also telling medical students and residents, or even people in undergrad, be careful what you put out there. Because admissions committees at all levels, whether it's getting into medical school, whether it's getting into the residency program, whether it's when you finish residency and get a real job out there, the first thing that they do before they even open your application, they Google you and they Facebook you. I'm having a lot of people tell me that now. Okay, I'm on the credentials committee for our hospital, and that's what we do. And it's surprising what you can see out there. So especially as still students and residents, be very, very careful with that spring break picture from college. It may come back to bite you. Anybody hear this story last week? Doctor in Rhode Island posted a Facebook update about a patient. He thought he de-identified all the information. You know, changing this detail, changing that detail. But it happened that they found out exactly who it was. And he no longer works there. So just to share a little bit more about me, okay, I've been in social media since 2005, 2006. I started it as a joke, okay. My internet identity was Dr. Anonymous. People may still know me about that because it's kind of funny. But what I thought at that time and what I wanted to do is to tell the story. I wanted to tell the story of a family physician dealing with a lot of this frustrations in practicing medicine. So I used patient stories. I did. And then I eventually found out that was not a very good idea. There are other ways to tell the story of family medicine. So, and in fact, it was just been in the past 3 or 4 months where I kind of rebranded myself. Say I'm no longer Dr. Anonymous, I'm me. And just with that, I've got a lot more opportunities to share the story of family medicine and social media. So if anybody's out there thinking about doing social media anonymously, I would not recommend it, ever. This is probably the worst example or best example, okay? This is a pediatric, I forget what specialty he is. He's a pediatrician in Boston. And he had a very entertaining blog called Dr. Flea. He called himself Dr. Flea. He blogged anonymously. So what did he do? He thought it'd be really funny and interesting to blog during his malpractice trial. Really fascinating reading, let me tell you, back at the time. He was making fun of the other attorney. We were like, hey man, that's kind of funny. So what happened? The other attorney found out. It was a huge Perry Mason moment. He was on the stand. Are you Dr. Flea? Yes. Settled the case that day. So 2 lessons. 1, don't blog during your malpractice trial. And 2, do not ever blog anonymously. I know, I did it. And now I don't think it's a good idea. There's starting to be some guidelines out there released. The American Medical Association did release some guidelines, which are not that great, but it's better than nothing. Okay, this is from my home state. And it starts to give some rules of the road, especially for practicing physicians out there, on how to interface with some of this stuff. How many people heard of Sermo? Some people use Sermo? I don't, but I signed up for it. So what's Sermo? Sermo is a physician social media platform, but it's closed. No one can get it unless you're a practicing physician. There's a verification thing there. So the idea with that is that it's kind of like the old-time physician's lounge, where docs can feel the opportunity to talk about stuff without being watched by other people. I don't use it, but there are people trying to start that conversation within physician groups. The American Academy of Family Physicians just started one. It's called AFP Connection. Okay, that is a closed social media network. Okay, so they're trying to do this a little bit more. This is the second most important slide here. Okay, medical students and residents are using social media. Okay, this is the Future of Family Medicine blog. Okay, Google it. It's good stuff. Okay. They have people like Kevin Bernstein, who's probably watching me right now, student member of the AFB Board of Directors, okay? I don't know if Sebastian's here, Sebastian talk. The student member of the STFM Board of Directors, okay? These are the student leaders. They post, they talk about stuff like family medicine is a waste of your talent. What's it like to be on the wards dealing with some of this stuff that medical students go through? If you haven't read it, read it, okay? These are our future leaders, and they're doing some good work out there on social media. And you know, the FMIG network, people are familiar with that. They have a Facebook page, very well done. They're really ramping up for their national conference coming up this summer, using a lot of social media tools. They're using video as well, so they're doing a good job with that. How do people know what Second Life is? People are on saying, whoa, that's pretty good, pretty good. I haven't dabbled in it, but it's my good friend Jay Lee from California, okay? They're doing CME for physicians on Second Life. And Deb, your program is doing that a little. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We did a motivational interviewing series on Second Life. You create an avatar, which is a likeness of yourself, only thinner and cuter, and you can interview virtual patients and have someone observe you doing it. It's your voice, and then give you feedback on how it works. And it sounds like a game, but the real part of it is you do engage, and you do feel a little bit of disassociation from yourself, so you can practice skills in a way that you wouldn't ordinarily do it. We've recruited a bunch of our residents to participate in this program with the CAFP, and so that's going to be coming up over the next 2 months. They're going to spend 3 hours at a segment at home with their avatar, interacting with people from all over the country to learn motivational interviewing. So it's really cool stuff.
This is my good friend Jennifer Dyer. She's a pediatric endocrinologist in Columbus. And what she did was she maintained contact with her patients through texting. Yeah, texting. So what she would do every week, she would say, oh, Dr. Dyer, how's it going? How you been? How's your numbers been doing? And then she would foster that relationship. She's trying to get this published. Okay. So mobile, as kind of a part of social media, I see kind of as the next step, you know, because everybody has their phone. You know, everybody's checking their Facebook on their phone or Twitter or something like that, and our patients are using mobile too. So that's kind of what I see as the next step in using this communication tools. How about this? Emergency room doctors text patients their wait time. Anybody their local hospital does that? You do that? Yeah.
On the billboard.
Yeah. I thought this was kind of funny. I didn't know now that people find out if they match on their text on their phone. I didn't know that. I'm like, did you get the call today? I'm like, what are you talking about? I got a text. Did you match? So they're using some of this stuff too. And this is something from our local neck of the woods here, they put their wait times on the website. So patients can know how much time they're going to be waiting. So hospitals are using some of this social media as well. This is my closing slide here. Well, actually, almost my closing slide. This is Brian Vitterbegian. He's a pediatric endocrinologist, gastro GI guy in Texas. And something he says is, physicians have an obligation to be on social media. Why does he say that? So you go to Google and you put in vaccines and autism. What do you get? A lot of negative stuff. Okay? So you think, even with the American Academy of Family Physicians, who celebrated a record number of members, if each one of the AFP members wrote one post a year on vaccines and autism, it would rule those search engines. Okay? So physicians need to learn this stuff to get our story out there, because it's being drowned out by all these other people. So, just kind of your little tips and tricks, summing up. If you haven't searched your name, especially if you're taking care of patients, I gave a talk earlier this month at a sports medicine conference and had a great conversation with physical therapy people about friending their patients on Facebook. Something they never really thought about before, but it happens out there. So, anybody that touches a patient or talks to a patient, some of this is going to affect you. Sign up for LinkedIn if you haven't already. Okay. What are you passionate about? Everybody has their own passion about some kind of topic. Okay. Share that out there. Okay. You'd be surprised about the people who connect with you. I remember when I got some of my first email from overseas. They're like, "Hey, we love what you're writing about." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" You're some guy in some foreign country. But you learn how small the world is by doing some of this stuff. And if I didn't share it already, I not only do a blog, I do a live internet radio show. And it was interesting because I interviewed Mark on Wednesday night here in New Orleans, and our internet went out twice. So we do that at the Facebook page, we do Twitter. And a lot of it because I think that physicians need to know about this stuff. We need to educate ourselves on it. So as soon as you're familiar with it, then you can really know the power of some of these social media tools. And kind of on a sidelight, I have gotten the opportunity from my hospital to do some traditional media work. Okay? Every so often I go and I talk about some kind of health issue on our local TV station. And the other thing I tell docs is that if you want to do some of this traditional media stuff, okay, if you want to, be on TV or write this or write that, social media is the perfect training ground to do that. Okay? Because when you're up there, you're given 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you've got to get that information out there. Doing my radio show for 4 years and doing blogging for 5 years and that type of thing, it really trains you to do that. And I really think that social media prepares doctors to do traditional media. That's where our patients are at. So another thing to think about as you're thinking about doing some of these social media platforms. That's all I have.
So in 1912, the telephone was introduced, and society was in an uproar because they were just sure it was going to ruin our family networks as we knew it. People would be able to interrupt you during a dinner. They could show up in your home, unannounced, which was totally against the culture then. It was thought to be a horrible thing. We hear the same thing about electronic media. But I encourage all of you to think about what positive things have happened in our lives. One of the contagion aspects of social networks, those 150 people that you have in those 3 degrees, positive things transmit far more rapidly than negative. And so you can be an instrument of change in that electronic community just as you are in your virtual, your real communities. So I encourage you to get out there. And if you don't know about it, learn about it. Because we can really have an enormous impact. I've seen the impact Mike has had, and it's incredible. Our students and residents are there, and they're doing it. So be a good example. Don't dump your friends. Get some new ones. And learn how to make some positive impact.